Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome to the Computer America Show, everyone. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. And everyone, how you doing? Today on the program, we have computer and technology news, and we have a ton of stories, more than usual actually. So it's going to be a nice packed show today. And everyone, I hope that you're doing well and you are ready for some Computer America. So everyone, let's go ahead and get started by saying that computeramerica.com, that's where you'll find everything, including today's show, yesterday's show, all the shows, everything that we do here, including articles, reviews, and more. And of course, contest updates, social media links, podcast directories, all that. If you can't listen to us live on IRN, then we highly recommend that you check out the podcast. You can time shift us, take us with you. That's the second best way to listen to us. So all that being said, let's go ahead and just say one more time, computeramerica.com. And let's go ahead and get started with computer and technology news. Okay, I think that for our first story, let's go ahead and talk about tons of different stuff. This one seemed pretty unbelievable at first, but obviously it seems to have happened. So we can talk about it real quick with Uber. And it's not exactly something Uber would like, but hey, it's kind of what happened. So this happened in the Chicago area. You may have already heard about it if you're from the area, but out of all the bad press that Uber can possibly get, not often, obviously workers being paid less than, kind of what they're driving and just not earning enough money. That's generally been an issue with Uber before, but this one takes it to a new level where Uber actually charged a driver $2 to give someone else a ride. Yeah, the ride lasted, it was like I would say it was like a 13-mile ride, 13 and a half miles, and the driver was actually charged $2. So when it came up with, you've earned X amount, that X amount was actually negative $2.20. Now, obviously, that's not what you want to see when obviously this would be your line of work. This is something that you do for money, and well, you don't want to lose money while you're trying to make money. And the driver, who wanted to only give his first name as Kurt, said that on his 40-minute ride home, he was thinking about, I just lost money driving someone, when he gave a 13-and-a-half-mile ride in May. He said that he submitted a request for the driver app for a fare review, but the company said his fare was calculated correctly. Obviously, some kind of automated system to, quote unquote, look into it. But yeah, I doubt that they were actually looking into into it. And so they said it was correctly calculated, and then on top of that, he tried to call driver support, but it being a Sunday, it bounced him back saying that, no one is available Sunday. So only Monday through Friday business hours. And then he tried to get customer support directly on Twitter, and Twitter gave him another generic, or at least the Twitter account for Uber gave him another generic response, saying that they were going to look into it. So instead, he posted a picture of his earnings, which I think I can pull that up pretty easily right here. If you're watching the video portion over at twitch.tv, you can see it right here from this gentleman, and they show that his fare was calculated correctly, that whole thing, and I think even on top of that, let's see, his fare was right here, which, by the way, he has a great name. It was actually this one. His name's The Sofa, so I like that. Here we go. Here's the other one. Negative $2.20. Perfect. So he tweeted that picture out, and that picture received about 33,000 likes and a number of retweets, and about 1 million people saw it on Twitter. That's when he was finally able to get the response of the Uber folks. So there you go. Finally able to get a response, and they compensated him. Let's see, the response from Uber says that we have fixed everything. It was a software bug, a glitch, and fares for certain trips were being booked through our new reserve product miscalculated. This was a terrible customer experience for drivers, and for that we apologize. Notice there how in the response they're saying that their drivers are customers, not employees. So yeah, they're still trying to make sure that drivers who work for Uber are not seen as employees of Uber. But still, Uber introduced Reserve in November 2020, which allowed riders to book trips up to 30 days in advance. And with that upfront pricing, they're able to get a cheaper rate because obviously when the rate's going to happen. And the spokeswoman acknowledged that the drivers who experienced these issues with certain reserve bookings weren't appropriately supported when reaching out about the issue, and claiming to be reevaluating its support process so issues can be better addressed in the future when they arise. The most obvious one would be clearly this was not calculated correctly. So then the question becomes, if it was not calculated correctly, why did this gentleman receive a response immediately saying that, oh no, everything is correctly? My immediate thought on that would have to be that obviously with the software being, a glitch, as they called it, a software bug, it was calculating correctly, but the system itself was not calculating correctly. So it did the math correctly on its system, but the system itself was not correct. And one would hope that they have some kind of support system that would look at that and, take it more than just face value, than just, rerunning the numbers or, analyzing the fare and just going, oh no, all the math behind the scenes carried out correctly, and instead, obviously a more holistic approach and say that this person did not receive a fair compensation for, the work that they did. Now, with that being said, the article from CNN goes into a bit more about, recent troubles that Uber has had with customer support and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's clearly working for Uber and Lyft and these other ride-hailing services is can be pretty trying at times because you don't have the protections of a full-blown employee contract, and yeah, you're kind of at their mercy, and hopefully you get enough Twitter likes to garner a response. But I would like to say that obviously Uber would be the only one in that position, but I gotta say, when things go viral and things start to pick up traction, no, that's every company. They pay more attention to the squeaky wheel. Whatever's getting attention is what gets fixed. So So there you have it. Okay, so there's that story number one. Story number two, we have a lot of kind of like legislation stuff. This one's a bit different though. This one is not legislation. This is one of those instances where we've seen malware do strange things, because obviously malware is just any code that does something that you did not know it would do. There has been malware in the past that has kind of chased down software, other malware, deleted the malware off of people's computers, and then deleted itself off of the computers. One of the few instances of a good piece of malware. There has been malware that obviously has taken people's computers, locked them down, take system files. That's your more run-of-the-mill common malware that most people run into. There's malware that will change your default browser and default homepage, little things like that. So malware can come in a lot of different forms. This is a new one though. This malware actually blocks access to the Pirate Bay. And the Pirate Bay, while itself not strictly illegal, is used for a lot of illegal downloading, peer-to-peer transfers and things like that of copyrighted material. This is malware designed to frustrate those who are illegally downloading content. So this comes from a lab called Sophos Labs shares how a Vigilante malware is being distributed that prevents pirates from accessing the most popular copyrighted content torrent site, the Pirate Bay. And they mentioned that in one of the strangest cases that they've seen in a while, one of the colleagues recently told me about a malware campaign whose primary purpose appears to stray from the more common malware motives. Instead of seeking to steal passwords or extort a computer's owner for ransom, this malware blocks infected users' computers from being able to visit a large number of websites dedicated to software piracy by modifying the host file on the infected system. According to the researcher, the new malware is being distributed through Discord or pirated software torrent sites. On Discord, the malware is distributed as a standalone executable pretending to be a pirated software, as shown below. And they have a nice little screenshot here of, all these different files that were, supposedly doing that kind of thing. And yeah, so they have like BitLocker, Minecraft Cracked, all these different torrented file names and things that you would. But one of these, and I think it would be this, the Slacker exe that they have up here, and that would be the malware that is blocking people from accessing the Pirate Bay. So on the sites like the Pirate Bay, the malware is being distributed in a similar way to torrent files in the sense that they contain README files, NFO files, and shortcut files back to the piratebay.org. There you go. However, many of the files contained in these torrent archives serve no purpose and are only added to impersonate a typical pirated software or movie torrent. Looking more closely at these files bundled together in the installer, it's clear that they have no practical benefit other than to give the appearance of, something that is typically shared over BitTorrent or these other sites. And you can see here that one of the files that they include here is this one where it says this is a sample host file, this is a sample, this is an example, blah, 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 blah. So clearly not something that is actually useful. Now, after adding these host entries, when a user attempts to access one of the sites, they will instead be redirected to their local host and be unable to connect to the site's actual IP address. This effectively blocks access to the listed sites that are distributing torrents for copyrighted material. Essentially, it doesn't even redirect people to a different site. It doesn't redirect them to any kind of other further malware sites or try to steal their personal information. This literally redirects them to their local host 127.0.0.1, and yeah, it would come up just not found, and it would just send the browser back to something local. And yeah, very very strange that they wouldn't take this opportunity. That obviously, if this has the ability to spread to people's computers, as we have seen, and people are actually downloading this, it's almost like a missed opportunity that someone is creating this malware, and there is zero possible way that they could actually benefit from it. So Brandt told Bleeping Computer that this malware campaign was live between October 2020 and January 2021 when the attacker's site went offline. According to Brandt, the malicious torrents have also stopped being distributed, likely after users stopped seeding them after learning that the files were malicious or fake. So there you go. And the article wraps up with this little line saying that while rare, vigilantes have taken justice into their own hands in the past by hacking into Netgear to remove malware, distributing malware to secure IoT devices, and releasing weaponized versions of malware. It's not all that common that you see these things actually get some traction and make an impact when, by and large, they don't do anything. Because the chance for monetary gain is so high. If you're actually on their system, back in the day, it was one thing to hack into people's computers, have them download a file and, do like ASCII art and, just generally be a nuisance. But nowadays, being a nuisance isn't, the fun of what hacking used to be has given way to a lot of industry, I guess, and the benefits are numerous. So there you go. If you have this particular one, just know it seems like a pretty easy fix and just kind of redirects. And looking at some of these, they have like the Pirate Bay, Pirate Proxy, My Pirate Bay, pretty much every website that would direct people to the Pirate Bay, it redirects to people's home. I don't know who would release it. There's no saying who's actually doing it, but hey, it stopped. So at least there's that. How about this one? This follows legislation. Oh, and to address something in the chat real quick, yes, we've already covered that Microsoft is, they're not releasing Windows 11 on June 21st, but rather they're going to have a press conference outlining the features that should be coming June 21st. And the actual release date of Windows 11 should be sometime in the next year or two, probably. So, yeah, we did cover that, and we will cover that event on Monday when it happens. I think it will be happening on Monday or Tuesday. Either way, we'll have a finger on that one. Now, this next article, a feature that was always strange on Snapchat. If you have used the feature, well, looks like they are going to get rid of it because it probably should not have been a thing. It kind of encourages people to drive recklessly. And for Snapchat, it was a certain filter that showed how fast you were moving. Clearly, if you are sitting in a chair and you use the filter, it says you are currently moving 0 miles an hour. If you're walking, it might fluctuate between 1, 2, 3, 4 miles an hour. If you're running, it may go faster, which I think might have been like their initial purpose. But the worst case scenario is that you are driving and you are speeding, and you can use the Snapchat filter to kind of capture the moment of you breaking the law and going as fast as you possibly can. Snapchat is removing a controversial speed filter from its app. The filter, which Snapchat introduced back in 2013 in its early years, allows users to share how fast they're moving. And they're saying that, quote, nothing is more important than safety of our Snapchat community, and we have previously disabled the filter at driving speeds. Today, the sticker is barely used by Snapchatters, and in light of that, we are removing it altogether, which is great. It's if it's barely being used and you can't use it while driving, yes, that's perfect. A spokesperson told NPR that, which first reported on the move, on the filter is used a few thousand snaps per day, which is a tiny fraction of the 5 billion or so snaps that are shared on the app daily. I had no idea Snapchat was used 5 billion times a day. That's very impressive. The timing of the move is raising some eyebrows. The filter has been tied to several car crashes over the years, including some fatal. The parents of 3 teenagers who died in 2017 at high speeds in Wisconsin filed a lawsuit against Snap. In the moments before the crash, one of the boys posted a Snapchat using the speed filter. So again, like I was saying, they have been used in the past to capture the moment in which they are being the most reckless. Last month, an appeals court allowed the case to proceed, ruling that Snap wasn't protected from liability under Section 230. I would not see how Section 230 would apply to a product, not just speech said on a platform. But still, the provision, they say that it would typically protect internet companies from being held accountable for what their users post. Snap claims that filters didn't cause the crash and have filed a motion to dismiss the case. But yeah, if it's already been working through the courts for 4 years now, pretty good chance this just gets thrown out. But still, I think it's a good move. Now, obviously, before moving the speed filter, Snap made several tweaks. They mentioned that they changed the sticker to make it less prominent, and a "Don't Snap and Drive" appeared whenever someone used it. In the months before removing it entirely, they limited the speeds to 35 miles an hour. Which, still, going at 35 miles an hour, I can't imagine how you'd go that fast without being in a moving vehicle. But still, definitely a good move, and if it were barely being used anyways, that's definitely something they should have done earlier, probably. Okay, so there's that one. I think that our next story, and this is something that I'm actually not too familiar with Amazon Halo, but I'm intrigued. So this article serves as a dual purpose to educate you guys and to educate myself at the same time. Amazon's Halo, this coming from The Verge, and Nicole Wetzman, saying that Amazon's Halo body fat percentage calculator outperforms lab devices. And they show that it's accurate for people at different body sizes. That's the important part. Amazon's body fat percentage scanner performs better than other, more cumbersome methods of calculating body fat. A body scan is one feature on the Amazon Halo Band subscription service, which the company announced last August. The Halo body feature works through smartphone cameras. Users take 4 photos of their bodies, so that might be a pretty big ask in and of itself, but still, they take 4 pictures of your body, and then it combines it into a single 3D image. Then Amazon's tool uses machine learning to calculate the user's body fat percentage. When Amazon launched Halo, the company said it did an internal study to validate the feature. Now they've released a study, which was funded by Amazon, but conducted with leading experts in the field, showing that the tool works well. So there you go. First little red flag that pops up is how accurate is the feature, and it's done in-house with Amazon's own employees and its own study. It's paid for by Amazon, so no third party, but at least they did bring in external scientists who don't work for Amazon directly, although obviously they did for the study, to validate the findings. Now, that aside, the results show that the tool could be a benchmark for people looking to get more information about their bodies. And they mentioned that she wouldn't use it for scientific research, but it could give users another point of data, saying it gives you more information. If you have a high percentage of body fat flagged by this, it could be a red flag for you. So essentially saying this is not the end-all, be-all of your body. It's it's not meant to diagnose. It's not meant to be. This is exactly how much body fat you have. This is exactly the composition of your body. It's more of the fact that just like your weight, your height, your activity level, your calorie intake, that kind of thing. This is yet another point that you can use that you might know your relative body fat percentage. They mentioned that it can be a more accurate way to assess someone's health and their weight. Two people at the same size could have different amounts of fat relative to their overall weight and could have different health risk as a result. They mentioned that the percentage of body fat considered healthy varies from people of different ages and sexes. Women, for example, have more body fat than men. So the study used, and they mentioned how they were kind of using it. 134 participants. They mentioned, kind of their ethnic background, their gender diversity, that kind of thing. Overall, with this type of test, it seems pretty accurate for early stage testings. I mean, overall they measured like 134 people, so it's not super comprehensive overall. I mean, this is going to skew, male, white, and it's going to be more accurate for those kinds of body types, but still, it's a start. It's definitely a start. They mentioned that the accuracy held for people of different ages, ethnic backgrounds, and body types. It makes those same kinds of accuracy measurements for people across the spectrum from lean to obese, which I think would be the most important part because, when you have typical, that you should have plenty of photos and lots of data to be able to back that up. But when you get to either end of the spectrum, when you go really, really skinny or really, really obese, I would imagine that it would be harder to get a lot of data and be able to really spell that out. What is accurate, especially for super obese, I would imagine. So the article continues on for a bit. I think we're about done with that one. But yeah, technology like Halo Body is shaking up the field of body composition research. The question now is, can we use this for research and clinical purposes, not just for consumers out of curiosity? Can we use this for a real medical device to get body shape and size so that people can use it to make clinical decisions? And that is the question. The information seems to be good, but is it 100% reliable? Is it 99.8% reliable? Is it something that people can count on? And not just people, but doctors in making clinical decisions. That's the important part. And that, I'm sure, is the next step in this, is to really verify that doctors can use this information. Just one more thing that your doctor could, if you wanted them to, that your doctor could verify on an ongoing basis, giving you better healthcare. How about for our story number 5? Yep, blazing right through these. Facebook. If you don't recall, way back when, Facebook actually purchased a company called, I don't think they purchased Valve. No, Facebook purchased Oculus. There we go, Oculus. Now, in the Oculus Quest, and a lot of people thought, well, yeah, they're a tech company, but they're a social media company. What is the real benefit of Facebook buying a VR company? And it looks like they're closely tying this now going forward. A couple of months ago, they made it mandatory that if you wanted to use the Oculus products, which you paid like $900 for them, you had to have a Facebook account. It's not just so much that it was almost like a different type of monitor, but it was actually a service that you had to have an account for. And now the next step beyond that, we're looking at virtual reality ads, which makes sense now that you have to have a Facebook account so they can personalize those ads, and now they're putting it in your VR. I'm sure where applicable. And of course, the bigger question is, how ethical is this? Are they going to subsidize the cost of these things if you purchase one of these devices? Because let's face it, virtual reality gear is not cheap. These things can cost upwards of $500 to like $800, some up to like $1,000. They're very expensive, and the fact that these things already have ads in them, maybe it makes sense not so much for Facebook to do this, but more for people who design the software and have ads within their VR experiences. That might make more sense, but I digress. Facebook took a leap many people have been predicting for years. It started putting ads inside virtual reality. The company launched a limited test of advertisements inside 3 Oculus Quest apps, saying it would expand the system based on user feedback. The move is a turning point for Oculus, bringing one of Facebook's most controversial features into a medium that inspires both idealism and alarm. And it raises 3 big questions about Facebook's future and immersive computing. And if you're watching the video portion, you can see this image right here where it's for some place called Jasper's Market, and it says sponsored, and you can save the link, you can visit the link. But yeah, it's on this almost like arena type wall, and I gotta say, it's not perfect. It's a little bit, I think it's called like, not parallax, it's just not stuck to the wall very good. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest issues if they're going to do this. And if you're going to have these ads in here, at least make them good. Because the whole thing about virtual reality is that you build immersive environments. You really put yourself there. And if you have this giant ad for something that is not in, if you put an ad for a company that's in the real world, then it definitely takes you out of your virtual world. And then even on top of that, if it just doesn't look right, if it's just not imposed correctly on these surfaces, that's going to take away from your experience as well. And putting ads in, I get it. I mean, if it's for certain applications or experiences, go for it. But if you start putting these things kind of everywhere and everyone starts doing it, I mean, yeah, it's definitely going to take away from the experience, and it's just going to make it worse. So the article mentions the first question is how deeply Facebook will end up linking advertising with hardware sensor data. Even more than smartphones, they mention the gold mine of information that the Oculus Quest collects about you. They capture precise head and hand motion because obviously for virtual reality, you want the motion that you do to be as perfectly captured as possible. Little flicks of the wrist, little turns of the head, you want that reflected perfectly in your VR experience. They also mention that the pictures of your surroundings through tracking cameras and microphone audio for Facebook's voice command system. Future headsets will likely include even more intimate features like eye tracking, which would offer incredibly precise metrics on what captures your attention in VR. Undoubtedly. Right now, Facebook says that much of this data either never leaves your headset or is completely segmented from its advertising system, and it says it has no plans to do things like targeted ads based on movement data. But as Facebook moves deeper into virtual and augmented reality, you could definitely see how it may become an attractive prospect. I think it's very easy for Facebook right now to say it's not worth doing, or at least it's not something that we are doing, because I'm sure that the amount of headsets that they've sold is probably if they're lucky, in the numbers of tens of thousands. Compared to their monthly users of like 3 billion people across the world, this is a fun experiment, and it may prove to be fruitful at some point, but it does not need to be profitable immediately. Maybe if the technology really catches on, like I'm sure that they're hoping, and suddenly you have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people using virtual reality or augmented reality, which I think is going to be the bigger appeal sooner, then they're going to start mixing that data. But right now, it's such small pennies, they're going to not bother trying to extract advertising data out of virtual reality sensors. Still, Facebook is, and they mentioned a fitness tracker that Facebook is working on. They're building AR glasses that you'll use to interact with the world. These products are custom built to produce quantifiable insights about your body and surroundings, and it's hard to believe that Facebook doesn't plan to monetize that. And they also mentioned that the company is not really focused on business model. They're focused on experimental hardware. Though, like I said, at the moment, small fries. There's really not much point in doing that. If you can get them hooked, though, that's something different. The second question that The Verge kind of poses with this article is how ads will affect VR development. Several of the best-selling VR titles right now feel like substantive console or PC games and sell at a similar price. By contrast, it's not yet clear which app genres work well with an ad-based model. They mentioned Blastin', the first game we know includes ads, is a multiplayer dueling game that you can play in short competitive bouts. And that's what we're looking at here on the screen, where two people stand on these platforms, and just like any arena, sports arena or whatever, you have banner advertisements kind of posted on the side there. It's clearly, if you're playing some of the best games for VR that I know of are like horror games, and it might distract you a bit if you're going through this spooky house with blood coming down the walls, and suddenly the blood spells out Walmart. Do your shopping at Walmart. It would definitely take you out. It's there's not a lot of great ways to do advertising that feel natural and intuitive, and also again kind of catch your attention, because if it didn't draw your attention, if it just blended into the background, I'm sure that the advertising itself would not be very effective. Now, with that being said, and the author obviously draws a parallel to Ready Player One. With that being said, we can go ahead and jump over to the third question, which is how will Facebook and its critics address general concerns about big tech in the realm of VR? Although I don't know many people who have an issue with big tech in VR, because, man, VR is technology, and the fact that big tech would have a heavy hand in it, yeah, that's kind of obvious. Still, should Facebook, for example, ban specific kinds of ads from appearing in headsets? And should consumer protection watchdogs look specifically at how ads work inside the Oculus platform, which they've largely ignored when scrutinizing Facebook? Again, at this moment, it's okay to ignore it, because it's such a small ecosystem, it's such a small number of people, it's really not that big of an issue. But going forward, setting up best practices, I really do feel like a lot of the advertising industry, they're going to do what is best at the time that they kind of draft the rules. And we're still learning about what kind of ads should and should not be acceptable. Google, Facebook, Twitter, this last election cycle alone has given us a lot to think about in terms of what kind of advertising should be allowed and what should not be allowed. What's best here? Who's to say? Who really knows what's best? And to assume that Facebook knows what's best, or legislators even know what is best for the future of an industry, I think there's still a lot that needs to be hammered out, and I don't see it really being fixed anytime soon. Still, Facebook says it's not barreling ahead with a long-held master plan. Instead, it promises to look at feedback as it moves forward with VR advertising. As VR gets closer to Facebook's core business, Quest users and developers will get to see if the company keeps that promise. I really do think that Facebook does not see the Oculus platform as something to, really consider monetizing at the moment. In the future, clearly there's a lot of potential there. If they actually seize on that, what is good, what is not, that's going to be hammered out. Overall, though, from hearing about Facebook and Quest and the whole Oculus division, I don't know many people that are buying an Oculus as opposed to a Vive. and Vive as well. Let's see. The other one is VR headsets. There's the third one that I'm trying to think of here. There's the Oculus, there's the Vive, and like HP has one. But overall, PlayStation, yeah, I think it's the Vive. Although the Oculus Quest 2 is getting, some of the best reviews out there. Still, it's if Facebook is too overbearing with this, people will definitely go with another headset. But right now, it's just not big enough for them to really muck with. So there you go. Okay, so that's, let's see, there's that one. We can go ahead and tons of different stuff we can talk about. Okay, here's one that obviously we have followed cryptocurrency here on the show. We've, done special segments dedicated to cryptocurrency. And one of the next iterations of that story is adoption. And El Salvador is where we head next. Surprisingly, I'll be honest, thinking back on my entire time on the show, the amount of times that I have actually mentioned El Salvador, probably on one hand. But here we are, and if I recall correctly, El Salvador actually wrote it into legislation that everyone has to accept Bitcoin, and Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general should be protected in their country, protected and accepted. But looks like they're getting a little bit of pushback from the international community, saying that the World Bank has rejected a request from El Salvador to help with the implementation of Bitcoin as legal tender. Earlier this month, the Central American country announced plans to become the first nation to formally adopt the digital currency. It aims to use Bitcoin as a parallel legal tender alongside the US dollar. It would be a first. It would obviously be a first. The World Bank's decision could mean that the country faces problems in hitting its deadline to ensure that Bitcoin is accepted nationwide in the next 3 months. Why that's a big deal is because let's say you tell all of your banks within El Salvador accept Bitcoin, and then obviously the banks within El Salvador have to do trade with the world banks and other banking systems in other countries, and they have to do it in US dollar. They suddenly have to take in a lot more Bitcoin, or however much Bitcoin that they have to accept, but then they have to do what they see as a comparable trade to US dollars to actually do that business. And the main difference there is that, don't get me wrong, the US dollar fluctuates. It may go up, a certain percentage, but unlike that, these banks who may have to accept a ton of Bitcoin, just in the past 2 months alone, could have seen their money on hand shrink from $64,000 of Bitcoin down to $36,000-$37,000 of Bitcoin. It's half of the money just kind of goes up in smoke, which is not really good for the bottom line for these banks, especially if they have to back them up, and of course they have to have a certain amount of tender on hand. They mentioned that, quote, "We are committing to helping El Salvador in numerous ways, including for currency transparency and regulatory process. While the government did approach us for assistance on Bitcoin, this is not something the World Bank can support given the environmental and transparency shortcomings." So the World Bank is pushing back against Bitcoin primarily for what makes Bitcoin attractive to so many people, which is it's mostly anonymous, it's non-fungible, so it's completely set in stone. You can't create more Bitcoin just because you want more Bitcoin. You can't delete Bitcoin just because you want to delete Bitcoin. There's not a lot of oversight into this because Bitcoin, like most other cryptocurrencies, are decentralized. There's not a lot of control that the World Bank can impose over Bitcoin. And they mentioned that it comes after El Salvador said on Wednesday that the country had asked the World Bank for technical assistance with the implementation of Bitcoin as an official method of payment. They also said that the discussion with the International Monetary Fund had been successful, saying the IMF was not against the implementation of Bitcoin. And but the IMF last week said it saw macroeconomic, financial, and legal issues with El Salvador's adoption of Bitcoin. Clearly, El Salvador is trying to benefit from the fluctuations of Bitcoin. One would hope mostly up, but yeah, they want more people to do business in El Salvador because they accept Bitcoin as legal tender. Whereas most other countries, a company here or there may do transactions in Bitcoin, but by and large, not many actually hold it for any long period of time. And on top of that, especially here in the United States, any business can go, oh, you want to pay in Bitcoin? We don't accept that. And that is one of the biggest barriers to actually making Bitcoin an actual currency, is that people can actually reject it. Whereas in El Salvador, in the next 90 days, they're hoping that if someone says, I want to pay you in Bitcoin, the vendor has to say, okay, I'll accept it. Currently, no one has to do that anywhere in the world, but that could change in the next 3 months. El Salvador's economy relies heavily on remittances or money sent home from abroad, which makes up about 20% of the country's gross domestic product. More than 2 million Salvadorians live outside the country, but continue to keep close ties with their place of birth, sending back about $4 billion a year. Clearly, if they accepted Bitcoin, it would be very simple to send Bitcoin from wherever people are working back to El Salvador. So, yeah, makes perfect sense why they would want to do it. But I really do think they're going to have a lot of pushback from the international community. Clearly, within their own borders, if they want to do this, sure. But how much international business will be done in Bitcoin remains to be seen. But there we are. Okay, let's see. Here's one that I might do an article on. Technology that is kind of in the gray zone that people may or may not know. I don't think I'm going to cover this too much here on the show, but this article always catches my attention. This headline about Stingrays, and in particular, and Stingray is like a brand of product. They make a number of different things like tracking devices. They make cell towers, which is the point of this article here, that if you didn't know, your phone operates on a pretty basic principle in that it will connect to any cell tower, 4G, 5G, hopefully one run by your provider. But overall, a cell tower is a cell tower, and there are contracts all over to let you connect to them. So that's why you might have a different signal from Verizon to AT&T to whatever. How many cell towers do they have contracts with, and who do they allow you to connect to? Which ones you actually connect to, it's pretty automated. On the back end, if those cell towers are allowing you to connect to them, then your phone will automatically start sending and receiving data through those cell towers. Stingray does this thing where law enforcement, CIA, FBI, local law enforcement, police, whatever, really police, whenever they're doing these, whenever they're trying to collect data on individuals, they'll set up these cell towers that everyone in the area's phones will automatically connect to. You don't know, think about how much you know about the cell towers around you. Do you know exactly which ones, who runs them, who maintains them, and who owns them? Well, they set up these fake but real cell towers, and they'll intercept all communication through those cell phone networks and actually monitor them. And it's it's very untargeted. They're going to get a lot of information on people who are not part of their investigation, but they're going to hope that they get the information that they want and ignore the rest. Is this actually legal? Is this something that they should be doing? It's a questionable gray zone because, it's people are connecting to them willingly, admittedly unknowingly, but they are connecting to them willingly because that's just the nature of the technology. Cell phones connect to cell phone towers, and if you have permission to connect to it, people don't scrutinize which ones they actually connect to. And law enforcement agencies currently do not require a warrant to use this technology. They can set these things up all over the country if they have the funding, if they have the means. I'm not saying that they do, but instead of having to subpoena, request, or work with Verizon, AT&T, whatever, instead of having to work with these companies to serve search warrants, no, they can set these up whenever they want, however they want, and start collecting data immediately. So they mentioned that this legislation that's currently being proposed, which is called the Cell Site Simulator Act of 2021, is looking to change that. Currently, IMSI catchers mimic cell towers to trick mobile phones into connecting with them. Once connected, they can collect data. They can collect data that a device will send out, including location and subscriber identity key. Cell site simulators pose a twofold problem. The first is that their surveillance blunt instruments. When used in a populated area, they will obviously collect data from any bystander, you, me, the actual, if there's actually a criminal, other law enforcement, medical communication, private communication. If you live in one of those sites that, collecting data like this would be illegal, you would imagine these devices would be illegal as well, but they're currently not. And so with that being said, the reason for that is that IMSI catchers act like a cell tower, they don't function as one, and they can't transfer calls to a public wireless network. They can therefore prevent a call from connecting to 911. Despite the dangers they pose, the use is widespread. And they mentioned that in 2018, how big of a problem is this? Well, 75 agencies in 27 states and the District of Columbia owned IMSI catchers. I'm sure that the actual rollout for these things is something more akin to, we suspect that someone is doing something illegal, so we're going to park one of these catchers along the highway of a particular suspect that we have. We're going to try to intercept their calls as they're making them in the car or near where they live or where they work. They're probably not just set up and, thrown out there willy-nilly. They're probably very planned, but they do have those problems. They also mention that, so they can't transfer calls to 911 if they've been captured by these catchers, and the proposed legislation would make it so law enforcement agencies need to make a case before a judge on why they should be allowed to use the technology. They would also need to explain why other surveillance methods wouldn't be as effective. Moreover, it seeks to ensure that these agencies delete any data that they collect that are not part of the warrant, which should kind of go without saying. Let's see. So, it also details exception where police could use the technology without a warrant. For instance, it would leave the door open for law enforcement to use the device in contexts like bomb threats, where an IMSI catcher can prevent a remote destination, which would make perfect sense. So I think that's about that. And again, that kind of makes me want to dive into other technology that either law enforcement, government agencies, companies, that they use either hardware, software, and these practices that are common, legal, and are happening, but, should they really be? And that's that might end up in an article here soon. So keep an eye out for that. Okay, we have time for maybe one, maybe two more, and this one might also come in there with a new HTTP spec proposes the elimination of cookie banners. So yeah, something like that might also go in there as well. But let's see. Let's find something more fun to maybe end the day on. Okay, how about this? Maybe not fun, but something that everyone knows. Have you used a food delivery app? Well, if you have, you may know that they're more expensive than doing it yourself. That should go without saying. But how much more expensive? And this survey by, Which, and it's Which ? Is the company that did the survey, and they mentioned that food delivery apps have experienced a huge boost during the pandemic, but they mentioned a consumer watchdog Which suggests that they may not be the cheapest option, which, yeah, most people would say, obviously they're not going to be the cheapest. Putting a second company and a person between you and the company that is actually making and giving you food, that's going to add cost, clearly. But how much? And I think that'd be the fun part. It compared the cost of meals from 5 eateries bought directly and ordered on apps like Deliveroo, Uber Eats, and Just Eat. On average, a takeaway cost 23% more on an app than ordering directly. And that's the markup. Clearly, even if the eatery were to deliver your food itself, just by using one of these third-party apps, yeah, you're paying 20% more. The company said that their commission charges were fair. They found orders on Deliveroo were the most expensive, costing an average of 30% more than ordering directly. Uber Eats cost an extra 25%, and Just Eats were 7% more expensive. And the most expensive order was a burrito and a taco from a Mexican restaurant, which cost about 44 pounds. And I don't know the current pound to US dollar correction. Let's just assume $40. And they mentioned that that was a markup of about 44% as opposed to ordering directly. Before adding delivery and service charge, the cost was another $8. Prices on apps generally set by restaurants, and they often increase the price to cover the service fees charged, because the restaurant, which is already operating on such slim margins, food is not that good of a moneymaker, and they're already operating on very slim margins. They're not just going to eat the delivery fees and the service fees. No, they're going to pass that on to the customer. In response to the survey, Deliveroo said, "We encourage restaurants to set the same menu price as they offer customers when dining in, and the commission we charge is then reinvested back into the business, paying for riders' fees, customer service, and upgrading our services for restaurants." Just Eat said it believed its commission rates were aligned with the value that we provide our partners, and Uber Eats said it was focused on ensuring that the best restaurants and the best selection of food is available to customers. So some more numbers that they throw out here. Most of the people surveyed had used delivery apps for takeaways and groceries, saying that a number used Just Eats was the most popular, Uber Eats was the second most popular, and Deliveroo was a third. And most common complaints involved were late arrival, cold food, and missing items. And then the portion of customers who found that complaining was difficult, saying that Deliveroo had some of the worst customer service, Just Eats and Uber Eats, anywhere from 53 to 42%. Everyone had trouble with this, so don't think any of them are special. So with that being said, Which said many apps offered credit refunds, but consumer law meant customers should have been given money back. Consumer rights experts said that next time you want a takeaway, you should be aware that the undoubted convenience offered by a delivery app comes with an additional hidden cost. if something goes wrong with your order, you might find yourself caught between the restaurant and the app. And of course, one is going to point you to the other, and you just hope that it actually works. Very obviously, if you want to have the best experience, maybe delivering or ordering delivery directly from the place of business would be the best, because then you are simply dealing with a singular business. But hey, again, it's no denying that these food delivery apps are the most convenient. They just simply are. So some of the other stories that we did not get to include subscription services and how senators are working on legislation to make it so that if a company is offering a free trial, you don't have to jump through hoops to actually get the free trial and not have to unsubscribe before a certain date before you get charged. Free should be free, and subscription services should be simple to cancel. There's a new chip association between the US and the EU that should be coming to fruition here soon. Ring reportedly using Los Angeles cops as influencers to market its cameras. And I gotta say, kind of, duh. Ring has been very upfront with its close ties to law enforcement, and how law enforcement can actually use its services to request footage from individual cameras in terms of law enforcement and other investigations. So obviously they're going to do that. Let's see, that Apple can't block pre-installed app removal under bill. So yeah, if you wanted to finally remove some of those Apple apps from your iOS device, hey, maybe you will. Everyone, that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning into the program here. Tune in tomorrow. Ralph Bond will be joining us. Until next time, have a great